Good evening. Hope everybody's enjoying this weekend as much as I am. Before I get started, I'd like to ask everybody to do something along with me. I know this is a little bit strange, but I'd ask you all, just for a moment, to kind of close your eyes and think back to the very first time you ever saw a monster truck. And I know for some of us that might be rather difficult because that was a really long time ago. But put yourself in that place. How did it make you feel? And what effect did that have on your life? I think it's safe to say that that had a pretty significant effect on just about everybody in this room. I find that life constantly presents us with a series of unlikely coincidences, synchronicities, if you will, the full effects of which are not immediately recognizable. And often we don't really recognize their significance until much later in life when we can look back on them objectively. For a very select few people in this room, their earliest memory of a monster truck was a vision in their mind, something they worked really hard to make into a reality. As for me, I usually don't remember what I had for lunch, but I do remember the last day of school, my freshman year in high school. On that day, I'm sitting in homeroom with all my friends, and one of my classmates had brought a magazine with him. As I was walking by his desk, I happened to glance down, and something caught my attention. And on those pages was this Ford pickup with the biggest tires I'd ever seen, built by some guy in Missouri named Bob Chandler. Little did I realize how that singular moment, with just a few pictures in a magazine, would alter the course of my entire life and actually fundamentally set the man I would ultimately become. Einstein once said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." And when I began this journey, I didn't have a lot of knowledge, but I was blessed with a pretty creative imagination. And I say blessed because I truly believe that my aptitude for this was God-given, because I really don't feel that I worked very hard to educate myself with the fundamentals. Instead, when I graduated from high school, I met Gabriel Montes with the Texas Armadillo. And Gabriel provided the know-how to install some 2.5-ton axles under my Ford Bronco. And over time, I began traveling with him to events and crewing for him. And of course, this spurred my desire to go bigger on my Bronco. And it wasn't very long before Gabriel and I started planning on putting 73s on this thing. Then in 1985, fate stepped in. And I met the only person that could hold a bigger distraction for me than trucks. And much to my surprise, she wasn't scared off by my obsession with them. And she actually enjoyed going to shows with me. That's when I knew Lisa was a keeper. And I would tell her about my crazy ideas to build a truck and tour the country. And much to my surprise, she didn't think I was completely insane and actually believed in me. Then in 1987, something changed. Monster trucks began racing in earnest, and this completely changed my perspective of what a monster truck could be. And I changed from, rather than trying to mimic existing designs, I was inspired to try to develop my own technological advantages. Shortly after that, in 1988, I met another person that would have a profound effect on my life. Although I was already a fan, while he was in town for an event, I had the opportunity to meet Mike Waters as he was borrowing towels from my family's hotel. And we got along very well. And over the weekend, I went out to the track and helped crew for him. Then on Sunday, he came over to my house with his wife and newborn son, and we watched monster truck videos. And while he was there, he had the opportunity to see what, in my mind, was a next generation monster truck, racing monster truck. So we started wheeling and dealing, and ultimately that's provided the axles that went under overkill. Not long after that, and this was in 1988, not long after that, in Corpus Christi, Texas, I had the opportunity to meet another individual who I admired quite a bit. Jerry Richmond and I immediately hit it off, probably because of our sarcasm and irreverent humor that he's very well known for. And then in 1989, Lisa and I went out on our first tour. And very quickly, those visions of this glamorous lifestyle on the road went out the window, and we were struck right in the face with the reality of monster trucking. And we were like deer in headlights. But again, fate would intervene. At our second show, who would join our tour? Then none other than Jerry Richmond. And in the months and years that followed, he not only showed me the ropes, but more importantly, he and his wife, Amy, took us in and made us a part of their family. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. Without a doubt, I would not be standing up here if it were not for those two individuals. As you know, Jerry would go on to drive for me. And we operated under one simple principle: win. On more than one occasion, I remember Jerry pulling back into the pits with damage to the truck. And before going out for the next round, he'd ask me, "What do you want me to do?" And the answer was always the same: win. In 1992, Lisa and I were married, and I knew we had reached the point where I needed to hire on additional drivers that shared that same philosophy. And the choice was very simple. I selected my friend and fierce competitor, Steve Hess, and this really talented long-haired kid named Jeff Cook. And I tried to instill in them, as I've tried to instill in everyone that's ever worked for me, confidence in their equipment and the security of knowing that I trusted their discretion, and I never wanted them to feel that they needed to hold anything back. But a great team can't go very far without an equally great stage to compete on. And again, we were blessed in that regard. We were fortunate to have worked for the best promoter in the business, Aaron and Becky Polburn of USHRA Thunder Nationals. Aaron and Becky's tight-knit group represented the cream of the crop of the industry. And under their leadership, we forged a brotherhood that has spanned decades. I think you guys all see our camaraderie has existed since back then. We'll be brothers forever. I consider myself extremely fortunate not only to work for Aaron and Becky, but to consider them my friends. Coming off a Thunder National Championship, 1993 was shaping up to be an incredible year from Team Overkill. The guys were taking wins left and right. The phone was ringing off the hook with offers and bookings. And now here's the revelation of the weekend that very few people on this planet have ever heard. It's not something I talk about much. On March 16th, 1993, I received a phone call from Charlie Mancuso, president of US Hot Rod. During that conversation, he proceeds to inform me about a meeting he had the week before. with one of their major sponsors. And in this meeting, he submitted a proposal for an entirely new concept. This was to be a corporately owned identity backed by the sponsor that would be featured prominently on their upcoming televised tour. Understand that this was to be USHRA's first corporately owned identity. And best of all, Charlie recommended that Team Overkill carry that mantle. The next day, I received a FedEx envelope with a full merchandising contract and an extensive schedule. We were informed that the sponsor would be providing their contract to us by April 18th. Then 2 weeks later, on April 2nd, while replacing the engine in Maximum Overkill, a fire broke out in the shop. The fire spread so fast, Jerry barely got out of the shop, suffered severe burns to his hands. But the trucks didn't survive that very well. Overkill, Maximum Overkill, and most of the components for the yet unbuilt Extreme Overkill burned to the ground, along with the dreams of a very lucrative contract. It was simply devastating. But they say you never really know who your real friends are until you face adversity. And shortly after this, one of the first phone calls I received was from my Thunder National brother, Kirk Dabney. Kirk urged me not to quit and offered to do anything in his power to help, even going so far as to offer me the use of his trucks to fulfill the rest of our contracts. And it was a very difficult decision that I was faced with. But my prime motivation was the hundreds of hours I had invested in the design for Extreme Overkill that I just could not allow to go unrealized. So in July of '93, Jerry began building a brand new shop. And in October, we began construction of the new truck. Despite its complexity and with superhuman determination, somehow or another, Jerry and I managed to build this truck in under 3 months. Without the benefit of modern-day CNC plasma cutters and computerized benders, this was an unimaginable accomplishment, and one that to this day we only half-jokingly claim probably took years off our lives. But the pressure did take its toll. And before long, I realized that the time had come for me to step away from the industry. I no longer wanted to deal with the politics that had come to permeate the industry. I just wanted to race my truck. So I struck a deal with Kirk Dabney that would allow me to distance myself while still providing the opportunity to race on the Pin to Point series. And as a result, my life began to normalize, and I established a new business and went on to start a new family. But again, fate had other plans. Soon after, Lisa and I were confronted with the most severe situation: the loss of our only child. This would have a much more profound effect on my life. And it was a long, hard climb out of that abyss. And I would emerge as a different person. I became much more cognizant of the importance of human life and how each life affects all of those around it. As a form of therapy, I began writing a series of tech articles on monster truck technology. And I started spending an increasing amount of time online discussing my theories and beliefs in how we could improve the sport. And because of these conversations that I would have, I struck up a friendship with a seemingly like-minded individual. Scott Bryan immediately impressed me with his vast knowledge. He understood little-known principles and recognized small details that the majority of the industry had no understanding of whatsoever. And I had a lot of respect for that. Over time, I came to place enormous value on his opinions and his views, not only on monster trucks, but on life in general. And I consider him a model person. I want to be like him. I consider myself extremely fortunate to have earned his friendship, and I truly consider him like my brother. This is difficult. As an extension of those tech articles, I also became extremely critical of the MTRA. Not because I didn't believe in their mission, but because I believed they had lost their focus. And before long, I was contacted by their president, George Eisenhart Jr. And we had a lot of conversations about shared concerns. And we really seemed to agree on a lot of it. And he really started understanding where I was going with this. And as a result, we struck up a really good friendship. And he invited me to join him on the board. And I was reluctant, but as I've often said, if you aren't part of the solution, you're probably part of the problem. So I agreed to join in an advisory capacity. That is until fate inexplicably took George from us. In the wake, I felt compelled to increase my involvement and carry on in his honor. And after several years on the board, there were those who seek to diminish the importance of my opinions, claiming that I didn't have skin in the game, which was fair. So I decided the time had come to tackle the new paradigm of freestyle. But operating two full-time businesses, I knew there was no way I could handle that on my own. And what I needed was somebody that I could trust to handle the day-to-day operation and allow me to focus strictly on the technological development side. So who better, coming full circle, than to partner up with an individual who helped me get my start 25 years earlier. And Mike Vauders and I teamed up to create a new Team Overkill. Once the wheels were in motion, we knew that we would need someone behind the wheel that could put the machine through its paces. And literally growing up in the sport, and with his freestyle motocross background, Michael Vauders II was the obvious choice. But he far exceeded my admittedly high expectations. Not only with his incredible driving ability, but as a person of great intellect and character. Meeting him as a newborn, never in my wildest dreams could I ever have imagined that 27 years later, he would pilot my team to a Monster Jam World Freestyle Championship and a slew of others. I consider myself extraordinarily fortunate, as there is not a person on this planet I would rather have representing me and my team than Mikey Vauders. Now add to that list the new young gun, Matt Cody, and I consider myself incredibly fortunate to to have had such an amazing roster of drivers behind the wheel of my creations. As you heard, there have been many triumphs and tragedies along this journey. And chief among these is the blessing of my beautiful and intelligent daughters, Allison and Emily. But here's the real insight I want everybody in this room to take from this. Most people go through life with the perspective, seeing is believing, which is a fairly passive existence. I've always chosen to follow the logic, I'll see it when I believe it. Everything is impossible if you start off with all the wrong assumptions. And believe you can or believe you can't, and you're usually right. So like the pioneers that have graced this stage before me, I urge you all to strip away those self-imposed limitations and think big. Paint outside the lines. Be observant. Recognize problems, but don't just stop there. Do something about it. Be curious. Don't be afraid to ask stupid questions. If you ask a question no one's ever asked, odds are you'll get an answer no one ever considered. So many people just sit back and wait for other people to solve their problems. I prefer to live my life with conviction. Don't be afraid to follow your instincts. Get out there and do the right thing even when no one is looking. And don't fear people's opinions. Don't let the fear of other people's opinions stop you. The Greek philosopher Cicero once said, "Unpopularity earned by doing what is right is not unpopularity at all. It is glory." Today we live in a society that surrounds age with negative connotations. And some people probably look at the old guys that have graced the stage as the stallions of days gone by, now out to pasture. But again, I have a different view. I view all of our new life experiences as metaphorical stones. And as we go through life, we collect more stones beneath us. And as our pile grows, so does our perspective. And once that pile has grown sufficiently high, we can survey the expanse around us and spot potential dangers and opportunities. With that philosophy in mind, just imagine the unique and utterly amazing experiences that the people that have graced this stage have amassed. Without a doubt, that pile of stones would rival the Great Pyramids of Giza. Now, add to that the earned ability for them all to look back on their life and recognize all those synchronicities. All those synchronicities that guided their path. That, my friends, is a gift from God. I'd like to offer my sincerest gratitude to all of those that deem me worthy of this incredible honor. And I'd like to thank Jeff and Alan and Ross for creating and maintaining this invaluable institution. They deserve way more recognition than what they're given for doing this. This is a very difficult thing, and I can't thank them enough. In closing, to quote C.L. Lewis, hardship prepares ordinary people for extraordinary destiny. So I urge you to live your life with eyes wide open to the wonders that surround us and the limitless possibilities, and recognize and give thanks for all those synchronicities, because they are truly a gift from God. Thank you.